Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review of the film Wait Until Dark from 1967, directed by Terrence Young, who kickstarted the Bond movies with Dr. No and a couple of others. It stars Audrey Hepburn, Alan Arkin and Richard Crenna. Also Jack Weston. It's a film I knew nothing about. I picked it up from HMV. It's part of the premium collection that you can get at HMV. I think it's exclusive to HMV, the premium collection, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I knew nothing about it. I quite like Alan Arkin. I've never been that sold on Audrey Hepburn. I can't say I've seen a lot of her movies, must be said. We'll say that up front. I've seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, and I hated it with a passion. It took me 3 nights to get through it with my wife. She hated it as well. It's just one of them movies that gets so often praised that I felt like I had to persevere. I had to watch it all so that I could say I had seen it. But yeah, I hated it. It didn't sell me on Audrey Hepburn, it must be said. So she wasn't particularly a draw for getting this, but it was a blind buy. So I had a bit of cash. There was another film that I wanted from the premium collection, and they were 2 for 25. So I read the back of a few and picked the one that sounded most interesting, and that sounded interesting. So picked it up, watched it, and I'm glad I did, because it's a very good film, it must be said. So it follows the story of this woman played by Audrey Hepburn. She's a blind woman. Excuse me if I sniffle a lot during this review. I've got a bit of a cold. But so it follows this woman. She's blind. She's kind of confined to this apartment. And her husband returns home from a trip. And someone kind of just ditches this doll on him and asks him to keep it. I can't remember actually now the ins and outs of that. But he basically ends up taking this doll home, and it's filled with heroin. So the guy who it belongs to comes calling, and he's played by Alan Arkin. This guy called Rote, bit of a devilish character, it must be said. And he brings 2 henchmen with him, and basically poses as police officers and various other people to try and find the whereabouts of this doll. And obviously this woman, played by Hepburn, being blind, doesn't realise that these are the same people posing as different people. So other than the opening title sequence, in which we see the husband, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., who I know primarily as the voice of Alfred in Batman the Animated Series, which he did a fine job with, it must be said. Seeing him on screen as an actual person is a bit strange for me, but he plays the husband, and other than the opening sequence in which the doll is kind of passed on to him, everything else in the film takes place within the apartment, which is something I'm kind of a fan of. I like these kind of movies, films like Rope, Buried and whatnot, where you're really confined to one location. I like seeing what directors can do with it, how they can make the world seem bigger despite the fact that they're contained. I think it's often the mother of invention. Very few characters, obviously, but it all kind of hinges mostly on what Hepburn is doing. And thankfully what she's doing is very good. Now, she did get an Oscar nomination for this, her 5th, I believe. And I think, yeah, she deserves it. Now, I've not seen every film in the 60s. I've certainly not seen as many films from the 60s as I have from modern day, so I couldn't tell you whether she was the strongest of competition in the year 1967. But certainly the performance in this film is worth watching, I'll say that much. She's very good in it. She goes from being this scared, kind of insecure, rat trapped in a cage kind of vibe to her, to someone who owns the space, who turns the tables on her would-be aggressors. She's up against these 3 guys Richard Crenna is one who's more of a soft-hearted kind of guy. He's there to earn money. So these two guys, Crenna and the other guy, I can't remember his name. They're working for Alan Arkin's character Rote. They're kind of hired to take part in a bit of performance theatre, really, to play these cops who are trying to get to the bottom of this case and basically lying to her in order to try and find this doll. And he's the one who's a bit more soft-hearted, whereas Jack Weston, that was the guy whose name I forgot. Jack Weston plays the one who's more prepared to go wherever he needs to go to get to the end result. I like all of them, to be honest. I think they all bring something to the table. This feels very much like a theatre show, and I believe it is based on a theatre play. So that does show, and as with most kind of one location pieces, it does feel very theatre-esque, but it is still also very cinematic because of the performances, because of how engrossing it is. You don't need big action set pieces or explosions, special effects and all that in order to keep you engrossed. If you've got the character stuff and the narrative kind of sucks you in, which this does wholeheartedly, it must be said. There's this character who is she's the daughter, but I think she's like she's the stepdaughter of Hepburn's character. So she's like the daughter of her husband, the guy she's got together with, and there's a lot of animosity there at first. So this daughter really doesn't want to see this woman as her mother. She's very angry towards her, she's a brat, quite frankly. When we first introduced to her and we see her and the way she behaves, the way she treats this woman, I want to give her a slap, to be honest, and I'm against slapping children, it must be said, but yeah, even she pushes my buttons when we're first introduced to her, and we don't really know much about her, so that's why. But over the course of the film, as we learn that actually this isn't her mother, this is a woman who is kind of come into the life, and obviously with her being blind, her husband or this girl's father is probably given a lot of time to her, and as a result is probably neglecting the daughter. So you start to understand where this animosity comes from across the course of the film, but the way that Hepburn's character deals with that and kind of the situation that they're in becomes something that is obviously life-threatening, and Hepburn uses it not in a manipulative way, but kind of uses it to grow closer to this girl. She gets the girl involved in helping her out, makes her feel part of it, and that's really what it's, in many ways, is what it's about. So it's about this woman who's learning to live with her condition, but not only her condition, but how it affects the people around her. Obviously this girl who is kind of like her stepdaughter, she's on rocky ground with. It's about seeing her get to grips with that, build a relationship, and come out of the other end being more of a whole person. So the character of the husband, as I say, played by Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., I don't think he would go down too well these days. I get where he's coming from. So he's trying to get her to stand on her own 2 feet. So there are times when he's really quite harsh with her. I feel a bit too harsh at times, like to the point where it'd be like, again, he might deserve a slap at various points during the film, but ultimately he's kind of proven to be right, because the way he's pushed her, kind of like forced her to stand on her own 2 feet, it kind of it works in her favour really at the end, because she stands on her own. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. It's, again, I think it's just it's age, obviously, 60s versus a modern day sentimentality or whatever. It's just, I feel like it would have been handled a bit differently today. He wouldn't be quite as harsh with her in the way that he directs her, but there you go. It's 1960s sexual politics. Standout for me, not to take away from what Audrey Hepburn is doing, because I think she does do a remarkable job here, but the standout for me was Alan Arkin, because I'm used to seeing him as, you know, the old fuddy-duddy, the old guy who's very sarcastic, and, you know, you think films like Little Miss Sunshine, things like that, he's kind of cornered that particular role these days. That's kind of become his persona. So seeing him here, in which he's taking on all these different roles, because he disguises himself as different people, puts on different accents, but just the real character himself, the one who isn't a disguise, the one who is actually wrote, is someone who's very different to what I'm used to seeing Alan Arkin play, but very menacing as well at the same time. The look of him is very strange. He's got this dodgy wig kind of thing going on. He kind of looks like Sam Raimi. I was looking at him throughout the film and thinking, who does he remind me of? And then I was, Sam Raimi. He just, yeah, he's got a very Sam Raimi vibe about him. But just from the look, just from the appearance. But yeah, he plays this guy who's really quite menacing, quite an evil, horrible, unscrupulous little weasel of a man, and he does it quite convincingly, does it very well. So yeah, like I say, it's when you're not used to seeing an actor do a particular role and then suddenly they do it and they knock it out of the park, it's very refreshing to see. The climax of the film is very good as well. I like when Hepburn's character turns the tables on this guy. You know, she has the girl kind of take all the light bulbs out and like mask the place up, and then she basically makes it's something I've seen in many other films before now, but films that were done after this. So yeah, it's always hard to kind of put yourself in the position of watching a film within the context of the time it was made. So when I think that, yeah, this is the 60s and all the films that I can think of that kind of that have done this came after it, then I would imagine that the ending for this film would have been a lot more revelatory and even more tense than what it actually is. But like I say, even by today's standards, it's still quite a tense climax when she's trapped in the dark with this guy. Who's going to win out? At one point you think this guy is out for the count, and you know, she's kind of stumbling around the room, and he jumps out of the shadows at her to have one last kind of hurrah. You know, that you think of Scream, the end of Scream, when they're talking about the rules and how they always come back for one last. Well, that's right here. You know, in the 60s when they were making movies, thrillers and stuff. Yeah, it's true. Those rules are just as applicable to films of the 60s as they are to films of the 90s and beyond. Yeah, you think the guy's gone, you think he's dead or whatever, and he comes back for one last attack, and it did genuinely make me jump. You know, because I thought that was it. I thought he was down. She goes walking off to try and get herself back to some normality, and he just comes bounding out, and I literally went, whoa, okay, I actually wasn't expecting that. Well done, you got me. So definitely a film worth watching. If you haven't seen it, if you've not even heard of it, I urge you to check it out. As it happens, the film that I got with this, the one that I bought with this, is I won't mention what that film is because I may review it at some point, but it was the one that I wanted, and then this kind of became the second choice just to get the offer. As it turned out, that was the film I liked least, and this is the one that I really enjoyed and was glad. Which I love when that happens. I love when you get like a blind buy, film you've never heard of, and you're not expecting that much, and it turns out to be something that maybe becomes a bit of a favourite. So yeah, I'm going to give Wait Until Dark a 4 out of 5. As I say, it's not probably not going to be appearing on any top 10 lists for me or anything, but it's, if you like thrillers, you know, especially thrillers that are kind of all based in one location, this is top tier stuff. It's really good. Highly recommend it. But if you have seen this film and you know, maybe it is on some of your top 10 lists, I don't know, then do let me know about it in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about Wait Until Dark. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.